Some will say, okay, so are you arguing for throwing out the Constitution? Should the Constitution be thrown out? What do we do? Is it a living document? Or is it a sacred document?
It's certainly not sacred, all right? Let's start there. The Constitution is kind of trash. Now, let's just talk as adults for a second.
What did you say? It's what?
It's kind of trash.
Trash.
It was written by slavers and colonists and white people who were willing to make deals with slavers and colonists. They didn't ask anybody who looked like me what they thought about the Constitution. They didn't say, oh, Jim, come over here. What do you think about this old Constitution? Well, massa, I sure don't like how you sell my children. But I gotta say, man, this King George, he needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
My grandpappy used to say, ain't no taxation without representation for massa. Like, that's not what happened.
Okay.
Right? This document was written without the consent of black and brown people in this country and without the consent of women in this country. And I say if that is the starting point, the very least we can do is ignore what those slavers and colonists and misogynists thought and interpret the Constitution in a way that makes sense for our modern world. That's
Do you want
the
to rewrite
starting
it?
line.
Do you want to rewrite it?
I could, right?
First, I want to thank everybody that has subscribed, liked, commented. I appreciate everything that you've said. No matter what you've said, I appreciate the likes. Please share this with your friends. Make sure you smash the like button. Make sure you hit that share button. We're trying to make sure that everybody know that they're not victims, that they're empowered for greatness, that we can make a difference again in this nation. That we can stand up for biblical values, we can stand up for truth and push back against all the lies and everything that's false that's taking place in this land. So I appreciate that. And please, thank you for looking at my videos and participating and making our voice known. So there's this liberal legal commentator called Elie Mystal, not sure if that's his name or not. He wants to throw out the Constitution, to trash it, and replace it with something different. Now, as I've mentioned before, and I've told everyone, that is the final goal. That is the mission of the Marxists, the communists, and the socialists. They're using race, they're using gender, and they're using class. Primarily, they're using race and gender to gin up so much hatred, so much distrust of America, to where people will actually subscribe to what he said, that the Constitution was written by slaveholders. How dare we live under a document that was written by slaveholders? We need to throw that out and replace it with something that includes everybody, that includes everyone.
So are you arguing that the Constitution needs to be scrapped altogether?
Sure, but I don't think that's gonna happen. Like, if we could throw that out and start over with a new document that was more inclusive of everybody, that was written by everybody, at no point have black people, brown people, or women had a say in actually writing the Constitution or the amendments to that Constitution. If we could throw that out and have a delegation of all Americans to write a new one, I would be all for that. Okay. That's what they did in South Africa. You know, when they got rid of apartheid, they didn't tack some amendments onto their apartheid constitution. They threw their apartheid constitution out and they started over. Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen here. And so instead of that, what I'm really advocating for is that we interpret our Constitution so that we extend justice and fairness and equality to all, as opposed to whatever the heck we do now.
But what he failed to mention is that, yes, the Constitution was written by flawed men that did own slaves. But think about if a Constitution was written today. It would have been written by men that have condoned abortions. It'll be written by men that have condoned the twisted ideology of gender. It'll be written by men that have participated in adultery, written by men that participate in a number of sins. Why is slavery always an overarching sin above any and everything else. There were a number of things that were taking place in this country. Why not have the Native Americans participate? I mean, they were done wrong. Their lands were taken in some instances. What about that? When you start to get into tick for tat, this person did that, this person did that, you'll never get anything accomplished. Yes, the framers were flawed. They were flawed men. But that doesn't mean they didn't produce a document that was inspired, a document that has stood the test of time. See, when you're talking about throwing out the Constitution, what you're really talking about is throwing out our system of government. You're throwing out representative government. That's what you're throwing out. You're throwing out all the ideas that were explained in the Declaration of Independence. You're throwing all of those things out. You're throwing all the things that were listed in the Constitution. Those things do not apply anymore. And what you're telling us, when you say you want to toss out the Constitution and want to rewrite it with something better, what you're saying is that our nation is irredeemably racist, irredeemably flawed to the point that we need to tear it down and build it back up. That's what all the deconstruction talk is about. And so whenever you hear a liberal talk, whenever you hear a progressive say something along these lines, know that their aim is the total destruction of America. That's what all of this Black Lives Matter, all of this wokeness, all of this stuff, that's what it's about. That's their goal. They want to stir up so much hatred, stir up strife, take over so many institutions to where people grow up in this country, young people grow up in this country hating America. And they want to use black people as their battering ram. What atrocity that black people have suffered through the years, they're using that as the wedge issue. They don't care about black people. They have no intention of ever making changes that will truly implement and help black people. They're not ever thinking about implementing changes that truly help black people. Because if they did, they wouldn't have the same old policies in these inner cities that have not worked. Why do you think you have all the homeless people in the streets of San Francisco and the streets of LA and the streets of New York and other places? I was in DC a few weekends ago, and I know it was a big tent city for homeless. Why is that? They want that. They want to flood the system. They want to have the system so overworked and so overwhelmed that it fails. That's the whole intent. That's the whole intent. They want to overwork the system to the point to where it fails. That's their intent. And that's their mission behind it. That's why they constantly pick at the scab of slavery and racism. They constantly do that because they know a lot of people are too afraid to push back. But I will push back. I'm not a victim. I refuse to let anybody use me as such because that is what they want us to be, victims. I'm not a victim. I'm not victimized. I am an overcomer. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. The greater one lives inside of us. So that's what they want. That's their whole aim. Does he not know about the fact that, the 14th Amendment? I'm gonna read the 14th Amendment to you. Since obviously, and the problem is, due to our educational system and the dumbing down of standards for particular minorities and black people who have to go to these substandard schools in the inner city, they don't know the history of America. They don't know the process of amendments. They don't even know about the Constitution. They have no idea about the things that are available to us. None. Because they don't teach civics anymore in school. They don't. So people do not know how their government works. And so naturally they think that everything that happens to them is a result of the way the country was initially designed. No, socialism has infiltrated the institutions. Communism, that Marxist mindset has infiltrated institutions. That's caused us to be more of a socialist state than we were 100 years ago. That all changed when the Federal Reserve was implemented. That all changed when the income tax was put into law. See, all that stuff happened. See, people don't tell us this. We don't learn this in school. We don't learn this knowledge that it's systematically been programmed to have inequalities for people that are not the elite. They don't tell us that. The elite wants to keep people in bondage. They want to keep a certain number of folks at this level and squeeze the middle to where you have a set of elites, the oligarchy, the ruling class, and everybody else. They won't tell you that. That is intentional. That's why they don't teach you how to make money in school. They teach you how to be an employee. They don't teach you how to be an entrepreneur. They don't want you to know that. See, when people rail about capitalism, what we have in America right now is not what the framers initially imagined when they created this nation. See, when they created this nation to be based upon a fundamental idea that people are moral, a moral set of people. But as the decades and as this country has grown, people have become more and more immoral and more selfish and more self-centered. And so naturally, people want to preserve what they have. And so they set up systems, they set up institutions to preserve what they have. And that's what's happening. And that's what we're experiencing right now. They do it quietly and they sneak it in stealthily and you won't recognize it. That's how they get it in. They set up these things, they set up these programs, they set up these policies claiming to help people of color, claiming to help people when they know all it does is create a dependency on the government. It creates a mindset of dependency on the government. It does not create an entrepreneurial mindset. It does not create a freedom mindset. It creates a dependency mindset, and that's their intention. So now let me read to you about the 14th Amendment, and people will rail on the 14th Amendment and say things about that. 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were all passed to abolish slavery. And going a step further, the 16th Amendment, see, that's the one where the income tax came in and instituted that. That has been the most radical change that slid under the radar that people didn't know about. But I'm gonna read to you the 14th Amendment, just the beginning part, the first section. All people who are born or naturalized in the United States and subject to their authority are citizens of the United States and the state that they live in. No state shall make or enforce any law which diminishes the privilege or freedoms of citizens of the United States. No state may take away any person's life, liberty, or property without proper opera. See, when you read that, that's another thing too you have to understand. When Marxists and communists and socialists talk about abolishing the Constitution, they're really talking about abolishing personal property. They want everything to be owned by the state. See, that's that dirty little secret they won't tell you. You will no longer have access to individual property under their system. It'll be all part of the state, all part of the collective. And that's the intent behind it. But they won't tell you that. That's intentional. It's intentional for you not to know that because they want to keep you in bondage. They want to keep all of us in bondage to the state. They want to keep all of us in bondage to the state. The 14th Amendment talks about extending justice and fairness to everybody. But see, the thing you have to understand, Marxists and communists and socialists love to change language. To them, justice and fairness and equality doesn't mean what it meant to the framers or meant to the authors of the 14th Amendment. No, it doesn't. Equality for them, equity for them means the same outcomes. That's what it means. Justice for them means retribution for slavery. That's what that means to them. Inclusion for them means the inclusion of their ideas at the exclusion of ideas that are not like theirs. That's what that means. So if, for example, these Marxists and communists and socialists and progressives had their way, I want to give you a paragraph of what their Declaration of Dependence would sound like. So this is a Declaration of Dependence written by the Marxists, the communists, the socialists, and those who subscribe to their ideals. We hold these lies to be deceitful, that all identities are chosen, that they are up to feelings with limited rights, that among these are diversity, inclusion, and the pursuit of equity. So this is a paragraph from the Declaration of Dependence. We hold these lies to be deceitful, that all identities are chosen, that they are up to feelings with limited rights, that among these are diversity, inclusion, and the pursuit of equity. That's what they want. They want all of us to be victims. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. The fact that this person will say with a straight face that they want to toss out the Constitution, to trash it. And he doesn't even know about the ratification process. That yes, black people have and women have been involved in the ratification of amendments to the Constitution because it has to go through the Congress and then it has to be approved by the state legislatures. So this guy claims to be a lawyer and he doesn't even know it. But that's what you get. But that's stuff like that will go over the heads of most people because they do not know about civics. And see, that's the problem. We're the only country that I know of where we don't teach about the laws of our land, about natural law, about natural rights that come from God. Our rights come from our Creator, not from man. But see, they want these rights to come from a man. They do, because they want to establish their utopia here on this earth. But we are not victims. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. Thank you so much for liking your comments and subscribing to the channel. Please share this with your friends. Smash that like button. Smash the subscription bell. Share this with everybody you know. We're trying to make sure people understand that they're not victims, that they are empowered for greatness, and all this stuff that's out here that's telling them otherwise is false and will not benefit them in the end. So please, I appreciate that. Share that.